We have yet another game who has reached out for my professional opinion. Blue Protocol Star Resonance, an anime-style MMO that came out recently, and they want to ask me, a professional animator, how good is their animation really? And so we're gonna take a look at each class and their animations and see which has the best animations in the game. And we're gonna take a look at some gameplay and give it a little ranking. Let's go and get started. Okay, first up we have Heavy Guardian. Impact frames! Oh, not bad of a settle. That's a pretty good settle. Hang on, take a look at this. So first of all, she spins around quite far, has a lot of momentum here. See how she changes the momentum of this to like go to her other hand, which then swings around behind her with a decent amount of momentum that twists the rest of her body and hip. This feels like it probably has a little bit of mocap base, but overall the animators did a really good job at executing that weight transfer over to her other leg. And then on top of that, right here as she gets up, she actually lifts the blade just a little bit so her leg can get under it and that her center of mass can rebalance, and then lets it settle back down after she gets her foot hold, which is really, really accurate to how someone would have to act if they were readjusting themselves holding a giant blade like that. Very, very cool. I like this a lot. There's a lot of really good physical fidelity there. This immediate pose change, super fast. Because it's so fast, it actually is losing a bit of that momentum. Now, technically speaking, going from here to here very quickly, with a blade that heavy, it shouldn't be possible to stop so suddenly. But it seems like she just kind of gets into position and then like stays there without any kind of inertia at all. So that's a couple points taken away from the lack of weight in the initial pose. But then from here, you have a really good amount of anticipation with this lean forward, because as she's pulling her blade forward, you can feel the weight of the blade behind her dragging behind, which is really, really good. So anticipation wise, that's great. The impact frames are doing a good job. I do kind of wish that we saw a little bit more of her. There's not a whole lot to actually focus on during these impact frames because most of this is empty, right? There's a big empty space here. If her face was like right here, look at this. I just did this, right? Suddenly you have the same exact composition, except that the face is more in view. And if the face is more in view and you have more of it, you focus more on the emotional state of the character, which implies a heavy weight, which is good, right? So if we had a little bit more of this and we had like, you know, the mouth going like this as she already does, right? And she's like this, but that feels like a stronger anticipation because of that extra screen space. That's one thing that I would recommend changing if you were to manipulate it in some way. So this is again a composition thing, not really an animation thing. This itself is actually kind of fine. Like I kind of like how they've exaggerated this motion in almost like a dolphin type shape. You can kind of see it like just kind of drags her along, which is not a bad thing. It's a fantasy anime game and it kind of works. The recovery is still my favorite part though. Fantastic work. Yeah, not bad at all. I'll give Heavy Guardian probably like honestly like a 3.5 out of 5. Not bad at all. Next we have Marksman. I love a bow and arrow. Let's see how this plays out. Interesting. Not bad, not bad. They're doing a similar thing here where a lot of anime fantasy games will do, where they have a bit of what I'll call like bow recoil. It's not really a thing in real life. Most arrow energy goes forward, so there isn't usually a recoil, but we kind of borrow that from guns and we kind of push it into our understanding of how force works in a bow and arrow. Now, that's fine. I would say the recoil from that is actually pretty decent. That feels like a pretty weighty recoil, and the twist and everything is very balanced, and she readjusts herself pretty well. A little bit fast on that readjustment, but I can't really blame her because gameplay-wise, she needs to recover a bit faster than someone like Heavy Guardian, right? So let's take a look at the actual pose itself. Once again, I do wish we had a little bit more transition. So like here you can kind of see the beginning of this pose is pretty neutral. It's an idle pose, and then we kind of immediately transition into basically the pose that we're going to hold. If we had a little bit of finesse here and we could have an actual pose where the hand draws the string from the front, then we could have a little bit more smoothness in that transition, which could give it that extra level of polish. That being said, it happens so fast that you don't really notice, right? But it would feel better. The other thing too, though, is like this particular bow pose, I think could be slightly this way. Now, this feels like a nitpick, but it does actually make a really big difference. And that's because there is specifically a line of action here that is kind of being more emphasized if you use it correctly. So if you notice, the original silhouette kind of starts to encroach a little bit on her headspace, and it doesn't quite have the negative space that you want for something that should feel like it's a very powerful drawstring, right? Because the draw itself, the more distance you put between the bow and the hand, the stronger it feels. And here it just kind of dampens that power. It just doesn't feel as good, right? Because it feels like the hand and the bow are a lot closer. It doesn't really have that potential energy baked into its pose. So I recommend personally having that rotated a little bit, and that will feel a little bit stronger. But from there, I think it looks great. The effects are pretty decent, especially this right here. That looks gorgeous. I mean, look at that. Look at that. Not to mention the impact frames, baby. Let's go. Look at that. That's actually really cool. By the way, the way they do these impact frames is very interesting. They're doing it fully in real time, which means that they're using a refraction-based shader to distort the image behind it and to map it to black and white in real time rather than drawing it by hand. So they're able to do that to some degree, which is very impressive, actually. Like, it's not that easy to do. The pose itself could be a little bit better, but the recoil is pretty decent. So I give Marksman a 3 out of 5. Frost Mage is next. Let's take a look. Honestly, not bad. They actually have a decent anticipation leading into her raising the staff, although it could be a little bit better, to be fair. Maybe it could be a little higher, potentially, like so, right? A little bit more like vertical. That could feel a little bit stronger. Just a small little tweak in the diagonal there. But ultimately, that transition feels like it actually is connected. It's not something I immediately noticed when I watched it through, but as I framed through it, I noticed the camera shake muddies up the consistency of the screen space position a little bit. But if it didn't have that and it just transitioned, it would actually probably feel even better. So I don't recommend the camera shake if it's going to muddy up your silhouette or transition a little too much. The effects are probably the coolest we've seen so far, though. I really like the effects for this one. So for the effects alone, I would actually put this higher. I'd probably put this, honestly, probably at a 3.5 or 4 out of 5. Not bad at all. I would say it's probably the most fun to play in my immediate sort of like guess, but I'm typically like a mage player, so I have a bit of a bias. I like dropping giant meteors on people, so this is like exactly up my alley. Okay, next is Shield Knight. So I guess, like, you know, a knight with a shield. Fair enough. Let's take a look. Ooh, it's a stance change. I do like that. I like the fact that it actually changes the stance. I think that's cool. From an animation perspective, on the other hand, this is probably a difficult one to rate highly. Not because of the animation itself, but because I can't see anything, bro. I can't see anything. There's nothing there to see. I can't see it. It's all covered up by effects. Now, I wish it wasn't, and I'm sure there'd be some decent posing here that I could see, but you know, when you block the entire pose like this, I really can't judge too much, and I feel like it's a missed opportunity to give her a really cool pose, right? This, however, is a great pose. Great job. Great pose. Love it. Great support on the effects, and a pretty decent settle down to the new stance. Now, I do think the settle could have a little bit more weight on the sword, but that's a nitpick, honestly. It's not terrible. Like, if you just had like a little bit more balance here, this is a fun little thing. You'll notice that like if you like keep the sword at like the full length away from your arm the whole time, it'll feel heavier than it needs to be. In real life, we actually go more just like directly downwards, and we bend the elbow to compensate. It's a small little thing. So instead of keeping the arm straight all throughout, bend the elbow a little bit, make the sword go directly down rather than arcing down, and you'll find something that feels a little bit more like a heavy object, because we just tend to use the path of least resistance in real life. Ultimately, this one's not terrible. I do like the concept of it. I like the stance that they have at the end. I'll give it a 3 out of 5 as well. Not bad. Okay, next is Wind Knight. Oh, shit! Oh, yes! I love this, dude. Holy shit. Oh, dude, I love spear users so much. So first of all, oh my God, like the amount of movement that we see here at the beginning feels like super dynamic. She actually has a transition animation. Look at this. Getting into that pose, it's not just a linear like interpolation of 2 keyframes. She lifts up her spear, she brings it behind her, and then she rotates it. This is actually pretty accurate to how someone would do it in real life. Maybe a little bit more smoother arcs would be happening in real life, but like this is pretty damn good. And like it actually represents some amount of like martial arts experience. Pose is pretty good. I do have a small caveat though. I wish I could see her knee. It's not that I like knees, okay? Just to be very clear, the knee is just very important for the contact of the ground. You'll notice here, the knee doesn't actually show up in frame, and that means it's very difficult for me to actually tell where she is like crouching on. And it's supposed to be the ground, right? But like we don't see the ground here, so therefore it feels a little bit hard to read. Let's take a look at how to make that more clear. So it actually lower the camera just a little bit, and what you get from that is you actually get to see more of the knee on the ground. The contact point becomes more clear, while at the same time, this whole pose becomes more dynamic because we get to see the hand and the foot get closer to camera, which is really, really fun. And then you still get this really nice spear shape here in the back, right? So with just a little bit of a tweak on the camera angle, you can get a much stronger silhouette. So I would recommend pushing it. And then, oh my God, this next part is so cool. So she jumps up, which already caught me off guard, and I was like, hell yes. But she also rotates the spear in midair, and then she actually, it looks like kind of like almost like a javelin anticipation, which feels really good, mixed with like a ballet pose. Like, look at this. Look how elegant that is, right? And then as she does that, she immediately slams it to the ground. This is all really, really good posing and pretty creative if you think about it, because this is not like a move that you can do in real life, right? I'm honestly really satisfied with how this came out because it feels like a good combination of martial arts and dance. Also, great effects. Tornado effect looks fantastic. Look at that settle. Dude, the settle feels so good. It's just like she just spins it so effortlessly and then settles in back into her idle. Like I love that. And look at that slight weight adjustment of the spear at the end there. Like she just picks it up just a little bit more to get back into that idle pose. Like I love those little nuances. So far in Blue Protocol Star Resonance, she's the closest to a 5 out of 5 for me. Maybe a 4.5 out of 5, 4.6 out of 5. Pretty good. Okay, now we have Verdant Oracle. Okay. I mean, pretty simple, pretty simple. Like this pose is actually not terrible. I like this pose because the silhouette is decent. I kind of wish they zoomed in a little bit more to the character because realistically, like you're not taking up that much space here. So like if you had something from below, you could actually keep the same focal point here where like you have the hands basically converging here, but then instead of it coming directly down diagonal, you could have something that has more perspective distortion like so. So this could be a good way to have like something more interesting without too much more change in the animation itself, but you have like a more dynamic camera. So that's something I could recommend. The animation itself is fine. The pose is actually fine. I just wish the camera did a little bit more justice to it. And you can kind of see here, like even as we come in here, like the camera actually is close and then like we don't really get to see it as much as we go in here. If we look at this frame by frame, there's a little bit more interpolation that we could do here. So like if we look at this frame here, if she was in a more intentional pose, we could look at it more like this, right? So if she's more like this and she's like raising her hands in a way that kind of like has a little bit of that drag before she comes up, it could add a little bit more anticipation to it. So I do recommend that. It's a pretty simple action overall. She's just raising her arms. But yeah, I think that'll be something that we can suggest without taking away from the fact that the pose itself is actually fine. But honestly, just in terms of the lack of animation itself, I have to give Verdant Oracle probably a 1 out of 5 stars. Just not super interesting. Okay, here we go. It's time for Stormblade. Oh yeah. Okay, decent settle at the end. I do like the settle at the end. The weight's pretty decent, but I couldn't really see what was going on during the ultimate itself. Let's take a look at it one more time. Yeah, I mean, in gameplay, it works a little bit better because you're really not supposed to see anything till the very end. So fair enough. But I do feel like the actual camera work of the cinematic part of the ultimate could be a lot better because similar to Shield Knight, we don't really get to see her as a character nearly as much as I would like. She does a good job here at like being a silhouette that we can take a look at. But then what you're actually ending up with is most of the interesting stuff happening over here, which by the way, is a scythe? That's cool. I didn't even know that. I wish that was emphasized a bit more because that's a really cool part of her design. The only time I can see it is this one frame and then like it just disappears. I really need to see more of this scythe. The scythe is so cool. Please show me more of the scythe. One thing we can do is just move her because she doesn't need to be in the middle of the frame. The real importance of like a balanced frame is obvious when you look at this and you compare it to how it could be, right? Even if with it getting cut off at the edge of frame, it already looks better when you pose them like this, right? Now suddenly it feels like you can actually understand that this is important because it's in the center of frame. However, I would personally recommend, if you can, emphasize the scythe even more. I dare you. Like this would already feel so much better than what we have right now because we would have a huge focus on the scythe in front of us and we'd be like, oh shit, like in the beginning of this shot, she was holding a sword. Now she's holding a scythe. That's a big deal. That's a really cool moment. It would essentially be like a side view of her almost with her looking kind of like down, maybe this way, a little bit more badass. But this would ultimately come out towards camera and be more of a badass transformation focus moment rather than focusing on her, which isn't actually that important. This isn't giving us all that much more information, but that's the gold of the shot. Put the gold in display, put the gold in the front of the shop. You know what I mean? You want people to see that. That's great. That's such a cool moment. This actually feels pretty decent. I do like this like kind of like final attack, like, and then she slashed and everyone died kind of moment. The stuff that happens before that is mostly just like making sure that there's enough slashes on the enemy, which is fine. And then the settle's actually pretty good. The settle's actually really good. I like that a lot. So this one, I hate to say it, but I really have to rank this low because of the missed potential. I love scythes, right? Scythe animations are really cool. As someone who worked on Ruby, I have a bias. But to have a scythe character and not show it off, you gotta show it off. This one gets like a 2 out of 5. It has potential. It has potential, but like, show the scythe, please, please. I want more. Last but not least, we have Soul Musicians. She has a guitar, which is kind of sick. So let's take a look. Yo! Wait, that was so cool. This has so much potential, dude. Holy shit. I love guitars as weapons too. My goodness, this is speaking to me. I think the animation on these strums is really good. They've done a really good job putting weight behind each strum, despite the fact that like, obviously, you know, there's no actual weight being pushed, right? It's just you're strumming a guitar. But like, look at the jump here. What a gorgeous pose here. And then like, as she goes down, goes all the way down with the strum. So it feels like the hand is heavy, which pulls her weight all the way down and she crouches. That feels good. I love that a lot. lot. And it feels exactly like you would see at like a rock concert. You know what I mean? And then we have this. This I feel like has a lot of potential. And I actually really like her facial expression here as well. So fantastic job with the actual model, the rig, the posing. The animation is good, but let me show you guys the potential of this pose. If it had just a bit more camera, my God, it would be so good, right? Lower the camera a little bit and push it over to the side here so that you focus on the hand. The hand is where it's at. So that the hand has a little bit more focus on the perspective distortion. Already, just by lowering the camera a little bit with a slightly lower focal length, you can see how the same exact pose can read so much stronger because you have more of this intentionality behind the composition of the frame. So again, just a little bit of a camera adjustment and you could get a lot out of this pose. Overall though, I think this is probably the most fun ultimate, like out of all of them. I think this is a really cute one. I would probably put this at like a pretty solid like 4 out of 5. There's a lot of really good quality art there. It's just not being emphasized enough. So those are the ultimates. My favorite ultimate is still probably Wind Knight. I love that one. I think that's fantastic. But Soul Musician is a pretty close second. Final boss Denvel. Oh, hello there. Oh shit, Dixie, that's what I'm talking about, dude. Look at this angle. Oh my goodness, I want more of this. The focal length on this is really low, so you get this massive perspective distortion. Yeah, this shot looks good. I like the composition of this. I want this in the ultimate. That's what I want. Okay, let's take a look at some gameplay. All right. Ooh. Frost Mage, yes, very cool. By the way, that water tornado effect is actually really good. Also, is it just continuously damaging him? Oh, look at the effects there. Okay. Is that a shield? Wait, that's so cool. You can block that? Wait, that's so sick. There's a giant sword attack that you can just straight up block with Frost Mage. I love that. Yo, look at dude, that. Bro, this slide is so good. So I've talked about this before in some other videos, but this diagonal is really nice from a composition standpoint, which means like the camera angles and like the character staging and the screen space staging. You have an upward slide along the ground. Now you'll notice that the camera actually is tilted here, right? So you see there's a tilt here. That tilt in the horizon is actually really important, as well as the tilt on this direction as well. That kind of goes off into the depth. The camera's looking down. Now, as much as it makes sense, like, yeah, when you look down, you know, you see more of the ground. But from an actual camera perspective, because our heads are not physically looking down, what happens is it actually moves the ground up. Assuming you're looking at the screen, you're not going to be orienting your head exactly the same way as the camera. So what you're looking at is what's in front of you. And technically, they're moving the ground up when you move the camera down. And by doing so, it creates this artificial slope. Now, there isn't really a slope here. It's just the camera angle. But what it allows you to do is it allows you to infer a little bit of support from the screen space gravity. What that means is like in screen space, there's an implied gravity that generally just goes downward. And that downwards gravity makes it feel like when he's slowing down here, that gravity is kind of pulling him to a stop. And what that allows is for the momentum on screen to feel more natural as he slides. So a really great way to add emphasis to your like sliding animations or like your, you know, like these kinds of animations where you come to a stop, it feels like a great way to add like a counter inertia to it to emphasize the stop. It's really cool. So great job here. Honestly, I love that. Holy shit. Oh my god. Not bad, but if it was like bigger, I'd feel scared. If it zoomed in a little bit more, if he was a little closer to camera and like the effects were here, wouldn't that be so much scarier? I feel a little too far away from him to be like intimidated. I want to be intimidated. Intimidate me. But okay, fair enough. Oh, he's actually huge. Oh, even more reason. I just realized he's way bigger than I remember. Oh my god, how'd that sword get bigger? That's crazy. Yeah, hit him with the ultimate. And the tornado. Oh shit. Oh my god. There's so many characters. Okay. Giant sword. Ooh. Good effects. Obari punch. Punching the screen, very strong. Okay. He got disappeared. Good pose on her, I like that. Not bad at all. I'd say the cutscene animations are actually pretty good. The thing that I'm most impressed with is like these shots that have actually fantastic camera work and cinematography, right? There's a couple here that could be a little bit better, but generally speaking, it's quite good. And like the animation is not bad at all. But yeah, pretty good overall. Blue Protocol Star Residence, you asked for my opinion, and ultimately I see a lot of really good art here. The only thing that's holding it back is the camera work. And I really hope you guys can improve that in the future because it can show off a lot of what you guys have already made look really good. Now, the animation budget of this game doesn't feel as big as other games, but that's also because I want to point out that the character customization features of an MMO make it difficult for animations to work for every single style of character. So I can totally understand why they simplified a lot of the animations, and I don't fault them for that. Overall, I like the poses, I like the anticipation, and I like the potential. If we can just push the camera work, it'll feel so good. And if you like watching me break down animations like this one, feel free to subscribe or take a look at this video right over here.